Hello, and welcome to the Faith, Life, and Learning podcast from Los Angeles Pacific University. Thank you for joining us. LAPU is a Christian university that believes in a holistic approach to learning and to faith. In these conversations, we hope to explore how faith impacts all aspects of our lives. Whether you are already a part of the LAPU community or a guest, we are glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the conversation.
It is so interesting because we're giving it so much trust, right? As we ask it questions, maybe even vulnerable questions about faith. What does this mean? What are the implications for this? And as it vets the information from everywhere, seemingly, and it's doing it in fractions of seconds, and then putting it and speaking it in a way that is conversational and has a personality. It's just like what a remarkable thing, and it's kind of creepy. Like, I kind of understand the creepiness factor that many people can have towards it, but when you consider that power that it's doing, how it's filtering the information and the knowledge and then spitting it back out to you in ways that hopefully we can hear it, that are friendly, even that are welcoming and forgiving. And yeah, what a remarkable thing. And we really do put a lot of trust into it. But segueing from what you just said, Mike, that was a great segue from what I was just going to ask, which is, as a tool, does it still come from the Lord? Like, we have so many tools that humankind has made. Sometimes the same tool can be used for good or evil, right? You could have something like a bow and arrow that's used to maybe gather food that's needed for the group. And if it works, it's great. What a great tool. Every good and perfect gift comes from the Lord above. Like, that's a great thing. But then it can also be used for evil as well. And we've seen that in human history. And maybe the reservation that some people have about AI is that it might have potential to do either or. I'm just riffing here a little bit, but it seems to me that as we receive it as something that is good and that is imparting knowledge and maybe wisdom and things that we can take from it, we can still attribute those good things to God. Do you agree? Does anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, so there's a theological term called common grace, and it's this idea that there's good things in the world that God imparts for everyone. Or you could also think of it in terms of like this idea of general revelation, like God reveals himself through creation, through beauty, through creativity, through all the things that we experience that are good. And of course, our world also, we deal with the effects of sin that are still wreaking havoc on so many lives. And so we hold these things in tension. And part of, I think, the Christian faith is living in that tension and recognizing there's good things that come from God. And often at the same time, we have to use discernment and wisdom because people have this ability to twist things or to use things in ways that aren't good. And so the more I've spent a lot of time studying theology, the more I study theology, the more I see that the world isn't really black and white. It's like not like this one thing is always good and this one thing is always bad. There's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of potential for people to choose one way or the other on how they're going to use something. And I think as we look at this particular technology, the good that can come out of it is incredible. It's not the only technology that's been developed, right? That really good things can happen and also really bad things can happen. And part of the conversation and part of what we're trying to bring into that as the Faith, Life, and Learning Committee here at LAPU is to also like bring in this ethical question and these ethical ideas of what does it mean to use it well? What's this responsibility that we have as staff? And then if I'm a student, how do I use this ethically? Am I going to get in trouble for plagiarism if I use it? I know there can still be some uncertainty. And part of the thing we're trying to do in this conversation and even as a whole at the university is help our students navigate these ethical questions, provide them resources. We created even a how to cite Spark button in your course. So, it provides you an APA formatted example on how to cite Spark in your discussion forums or in your papers so that you can use it. And I really like this idea, kind of connecting back to John 1, using AI to foster this creativity, to spark, that's where it gets its name, spark new ideas. And then giving some credit if you're having a great conversation with Spark and you learn some things, cite it. And in that sense, you can use this for good and not evil. Yeah, I think, when it comes down to just kind of some of these basics of what's right and what's wrong, the temptation, of course, could be to use Spark or another AI tool just to come up with an answer and put it in an assignment, for example. And that is going to be twisting the intent, right, of what this is for. And that would be an example of using it not for good. And yet we see the potential and the possibility, and we believe in God's good work through this, that we don't want to fence it off and tell you never to use it, because this is part of the world that we're in. And so how do we create these tools and these habits in order to use it well?
Yeah, this is Craig. I want to highlight some of those points, Brant. I think a part of it is we want to prepare students for career success. And this is a tool that's infiltrating every different discipline. And so as educators, we want to make sure we're preparing students for career success. We also want to role model to our students how to use it correctly and ethically. And as an academic institution, academic integrity is pivotal for us. It's really critical. And so part of what we've had in discussion with the other academic leaders at LAPU, our main focus is giving credit where credit is due, meaning that if I'm a student and I'm using any source, that I'm ultimately giving credit where credit's due, and I'm not submitting that on my behalf. Rather, I'm sharing what I learned from that resource and then highlighting my learning. And so that's what we want to role model at LAP. We want students to know that it's not unethical to use any of these tools. We just need to clearly specify where we got that information and give credit where credit's due.
Yes. And I would also like to add, this is Carlos, especially since we've been talking about the creation story, is even from the beginning, Adam and Eve were tempted. And even throughout scripture, there's always temptation. Some people did give in to sin. And so we see the consequences of that. And so with AI, there will be that temptation to want to take shortcuts. We all are human and we want to save time. And a lot of our students, they're stressed out already with all their responsibilities and they're on deadlines. And so that temptation is there to want to get things done faster and not give proper credit. But like anything else, there will be consequences. And so one of the things as I've kind of played around with AI is that I've learned it is not always accurate. If that temptation is there, just know there is a big risk that anyone would be taking to either get caught in plagiarism or actually being caught just with inaccurate information.
Yeah, and actually we did some testing with Spark and uploaded some content that we just kind of copied from Spark and put into our originality checker, and it caught it as plagiarism and found sources on the web. So it is a tool. I think of the printing press, what a phenomenal thing. But then you start to get things like magazines and in the Inquirer, which spreads gossip and false information. Who doesn't love to read the National Geographic and see images and information from around the world? But likewise, you have a misuse of that same tool, that printing press, to create things like the Inquirer, and things that spreads gossip and slander about individuals and like really bizarre, strange things, which may be entertaining to read, but aren't always beneficial to the people who are being slandered or gossip. So we have this interesting conversation that's just really interesting. I do think that it is a tool, and the people who create it have some input on its good or evil intent, but also the people who use it, like we were talking about, that temptation, we can use it for good or evil. I just finished my master's program here, and I got into some assignments that I just didn't know where to start. And one of the powerful things of AI, we didn't have Spark when I was finishing up my program, but I used ChatGPT to give me ideas. Like, this is what I have to write a paper on or a response on. What are some ideas or some practical examples of this circumstance that I could write on? And it gave me like 5 or 6 really good examples. And all it did was speed up my ability to go research. And it is important to know too, as we talk about this with the students, is it's not a scholarly resource, but we can use it to initiate the research process. We can use it to help us narrow down topics, to even, like, you could find keywords to use in the library research. We can use it to give us ideas on how to write or to better our writing, to improve, how we can improve what's been written. So there's all kinds of ways that we can use in an ethical way, and not just look for answers, but look for ideas to get us going into the scholarly research to find what we're looking for. Because it has such a vast knowledge, because it is trained on a lot of, our Spark especially is limited knowledge, but it does have access to the World Wide Web to target things that we've trained it based on our course content. We can actually go and get specific examples to help us then begin to research them. Definitely a lot of power for individuals to wield, and the need for ethics, I think, is so important here to say, how do I use this power? It requires us to be really responsible because we've been given great power, right? Great power requires great responsibility. And that's really the case here. We have a very powerful tool that we've released to all of our students to use. And I get there's some concern about that. Like if I was handed a gun, I'd be really nervous to use it without proper training or without some kind of encouragement. I'm hoping this conversation, as well as the ones that we're creating for the training on Spark, are going to help people feel more confident to play and explore and be curious, because that curiosity leads to learning experiences that are incredibly phenomenal, as many of our students and even our faculty have stated. So
yeah, thanks everyone. Those are all great thoughts. And I bring it back to the imagery and how great the name Spark is. I love that for what it kind of refers to for our students on their academic journey, because the spark, of course, is not the end goal of a student's journey through education. You don't want to end with a spark. You want to end with a roaring bonfire. And so it seems to not be false advertisement in the name of it, just saying, hey, this is a useful spark for hoping to get that roaring fire going. That is your knowledge, your wisdom, your education. It doesn't end with the spark. It's just something that gets the fire going a little bit. And to your point, Mike, can maybe then lead to good scholarly articles that you find about that topic. And then you incorporate that into your writings. And then you got this great essay paper. But your references page probably shouldn't just say, I found this from Spark. That's probably not going to endear you very well to your professors, who are the guardians of your scholarship. I wanted to give just a little brief example of faith and Spark, because this did kind of blow my mind. I was testing it and I asked it about the topic of faith and my walk with Jesus and growth mindset, because growth mindset is a topic that we encounter in our ISTU 101 course early on. It's a theme that we love to just have ongoing at LAPU. We believe very strongly in this idea of just growth every day, a little bit, little by little. And I asked it about this, and one of the responses that it gave me was it brought 2 Peter 3:18 into it. And that verse reads, "But grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." And then Spark went on to offer a thought on that and said, this verse encourages Christians to continually learn and grow in their relationship with Christ, which is a key aspect of a growth mindset. And that was kind of like, I had to thinking about it, and I'm thinking, like, is that right? What it said? Like, this is a very sensitive thing I'm asking about. I'm asking about my walk with the Lord. Like, did it give me good, sound advice and information on that? And I have to say it was pretty good. And I wouldn't have thought of that verse if Spark hadn't brought that into it, which is the really cool part. So Yvonne Ho, one of our professors in English, is joining us. And so welcome, Yvonne. Can I bring you into this topic? How can we and our students maybe use Spark and AI to engage with faith in the middle of our scholarship as well? Do you have more thoughts on that?
I used the Spark Bible bot, and I was trying to trick it. And I asked it, what is the purpose of humans on Earth? And Spark gave a really good answer and said something about how our purpose on Earth is to follow the Lord and obey the Lord, and to bring order out of chaos, and to follow Jesus's example, and to be good to each other. And then it gave a whole bunch of Bible verses. And I didn't ask that question exactly like that. I think I tried to ask it in a kind of roundabout way to try to trick it. But in the end, Spark gave a really good answer that's really close to, I was trying out the Bible bot that was trained on Reg's, focus papers. So it sounded just like something that the chaplain, that Reg would have said. And it resonated with me. And I really enjoyed what it said, that it's to follow the Lord and to follow Jesus' example of being good to people. And that it didn't say something about growing with the Lord. That's something you just did. But I thought about that and I said, this would be something I could post to the students. And so I posted that. And I said that this is what AI said, and my students were amazed. So I think that AI Spark can help us, as strange as this sounds, that AI can actually bring us closer to our faith because it's been trained on the right materials. I mean, that's what we have to remember, that the Spark, unlike ChatGPT, was trained on the material that we put into it. So we vetted it, and that it only has partial knowledge of ChatGPT. So therefore, it said what a pastor would have said.
Right. It's trained from a Christian worldview, and it very much gave that example back to you in a thoughtful way.
Yeah. In other words, it then went into the materials of what Reg would have said, and it was very thoughtful. And I do believe that Spark can help students increase their faith because it's trained on material that's been vetted by the university.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Yvonne. That's a wonderful example of engaging with faith and scholarship that Spark was able to throw our way. And what a great promotion, by the way. If you just want to hear the conscience of Reg Codrington whenever you want, you just type in a question to Spark. I know I want to do that. I want that in my life. I want more Reg in my life. So I might just, hang out with Spark quite a bit from here on out. But what a great example of how to use that and grow in your faith and your understanding of God. And as we vet Spark, then we are also vetting its responses ourselves, right? We are also still thoughtfully and critically weighing what it has to say and not necessarily just accepting it for, no pun intended, gospel truth. Fantastic. We're going to end in just a little bit. I just want to open it up to maybe any closing thoughts that any of you all had about this topic of AI, faith, God.
Yeah, one thought I had as I thought about AI and the image of God and creativity, part of what it means to be human, we've talked about being creative, and it also means being vulnerable. And I think I see that in the example of Jesus and his sacrifice and his taking on human form and being with us and sacrificing himself. There's something really beautiful about not knowing everything. And I think asking questions and learning and the struggle. I remember when AI was first coming out and ChatGPT was first coming out, is it going to become so smart that it becomes better than humans? And I think about, well, what it means to be human is actually not to be the smartest thing in the room, but to have a vulnerability, because that's what Jesus modeled and demonstrated. And I even think of this in terms of, students in my classes, the goal is to not be perfect at everything. It's not to always have the right answers. It's about having a growth mindset. It's about learning. It's about the journey that we're all on together, and using Spark to kind of help us step into that, not so that we always have the right perfect answer, but so that we're engaged in the process of learning. I think that's the exciting part for me about this new resource that we have.
This is Carlos. Andrew, you had brought up the combination of using faith and academics earlier. And as a doctoral student myself, working on my doctorate in spiritual direction, I've had to really combine those two aspects a lot in the past year and a half. And using AI has been really helpful because there's only so much like Google can do or a library search can do. And so, and especially in doctoral work where there's a lot of creativity, really trying to create something that's never been done before, AI really helped me dig deeper in my research and what sources that I didn't find anywhere else. And so it can be scary at times, but it also can be really helpful, especially if you're embarking on something that's new and different, because especially in scholarly work, it's not just a typical, copy and paste and just connect the dots and get a paper done. It's way more than that. And so if anyone is willing, it can take you on a journey you've never been on before, but it's a really good tool and definitely something really helpful to get things done. And actually, you may never know what you may find, and it's quite the adventure.
Well, thanks everyone. It was a really fun conversation. I really enjoyed speaking about this topic with all of you, and we hope that this is very encouraging to our student population who maybe is thinking about using this tool, who maybe wants to think about bridging scholarship with faith, and how to be able to incorporate Spark into being a student at LAPU. So we just encourage you on that journey. We're on the same journey with you. And what great closing thoughts to use that. And then we then get to spill out our hearts and our thoughts back onto the paper, which is arguably more divine, because we're daring to be vulnerable and we're daring to put things out there that might not be perfect. And that's what God, even though Jesus was perfect, he came in the form of human and became vulnerable with us. So we get to take part in that and co-create with our thoughts and our scholarship in turn. So beautiful thoughts. Thanks everyone for the great conversation, and we hope you enjoyed this.
Thanks for listening to the Faith, Life, and Learning podcast from Los Angeles Pacific University. If you enjoy these conversations and would like to hear more, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button. For more information about Los Angeles Pacific University, please visit our website at lapu.edu. Learn and live fully.